My name is Alyssa Reid. Welcome to my seminar on the design process. What you can see on the front cover is my poster depicting today's seminar that I will be discussing with you on this topic. My current process of thinking has been formed and developed over the duration of my time at uni, as we have studied design processes in great depth and analysis. As students, we have assessed our own and completed many projects and tutorial activities in context to this. I have also gained more knowledge as to my own process after our recent assignment in which we researched many different design models. The different formation of models allowed me to have an understanding of not only my design thought process, but what it looks like in formation of a model. When we started studying design process thinking, I started to actually think, what is a process and what does it look like? Ideas of steps and all different types of ways people do things through their own thinking and creative pattern came up. This is when I realized there is a process to a lot of things, almost everything, even life. From your gym routine to how musicians make music, even cooking. No process was the same, and that was the beautiful, creative, unique aspect of it. I have a creative making process that involves drawing, mind mapping, receiving feedback, taking work to the computer, and sometimes other steps are involved. However, that process changes all the time depending on my thought process and the direction I would like to take a project. Something my process could look like is the following photos in that order. And sometimes my process can look like this in a different order, like the following photos at the bottom. I find my thinking quite scattered at times, altering my creative process, but there is also always a similar outcome of my work. What I thought would happen with my design process. Holy shit, was my first thought. This is a lot to take in. How do I even find my own process if it's always scattered and I have no order of doing things? What if I don't like order? I thought understanding my own process would be a total disaster. I was feeling overwhelmed, distracted, cleaning the house and doing anything but figuring it out. I feel like I was underestimating myself by labeling myself as someone lacking in organisation and a sense of process at all. I was really stuck, to be honest. When Michael gave us a project to go home and make something that touching gives us a sense of what it is, I was like, ugh, why are you doing this to us? But then I realised why he was giving us these instructions and making us do this. He wanted us to gain a sense of direction in which is our process thinking. And this really made me think about my design process and get stuck right into it. After much deliberation and study, I began to understand the significance of having a design process or a series of steps. Designers found themselves having a sense of organization and viewed it as a necessity. I succumbed to the importance of having a design process. As I analysed my own design process, I realised there's no wrong or right way of doing things either. You can have a process and it not always being in a chronological order. I now feel more confident, organised, and aware of others' processes. In fact, figuring out my own process allowed me to feel less stressed and all over the place as a designer. I tried many forms of processes and I liked creative process flowcharts the best. This is my own design process that I've created. For the most part, my creative process also follows this order. I began with a list of ideas in the formation of a mind map. As a part of the mind map process, I am researching and finding inspiring images and information in which further expands my list of ideas. I then begin to draw from my ideas and information, making sketches and progress. Then taking a sort of final idea to the computer and beginning to make illustrative progress. After I have somewhat of a design, I then will reach out to my friends and family and other designers for their opinion, guidance, and feedback. After critically analysing, I will then go back to my computer and finalise my designs as part of my process. I used a creative process flowchart to illustrate my process model as it was quite visually stimulating, and as a visual learner, it was more appealing to me. I did my creative process model in the formation of a creative process flowchart as I found it very visually stimulating, and as a visual learner, I found it most appealing to myself as a designer. In my recent essay for Design Thinking Process Models, I discussed my ADHD as a designer, as this was a significant part of realizing my own process. I once heard someone quote ADHD as brain art. I really understood this as being ADHD, we have endless energy and one of the most fast processing brains that can multitask and problem solve easier than others, being our advantage. I like to view my ADHD as a design superpower. However, it can disrupt my design process in a negative way. When clustered in stressful thoughts, you become overwhelmed, in which stops you from being productive. And there's just being the queen of procrastination. When researching, I saw how driven people were organized, and then I realized I should not compare myself to people as thinking can be very abnormal and unique being ADHD. I need to understand my own process that can work for me and my differences, and accept that there inevitably will always be procrastination. The goal is how can I be productive in design even when procrastinating? I wanted to discuss ADHD with you guys as a designer, as I feel like it has never really been acknowledged before, and it really does affect you as a person and in your creative processes. However, I'm really grateful to have my unique mind, and I will always use it as an advantage within the design industry. Never underestimate a designer with ADHD. I am now going to talk about one of the processes I discussed in my essay. The first process model is HCD process by IDEO. I liked how visually appealing this model was and how a graph was used to illustrate productivity in the research, ideation, and implementation stage of designing. I felt as if I could relate in terms of converging and diverging within my creative process thinking. This graph is unique and I think it can be personalized to one's own creative process. Whilst pondering the web, I came across creative process flowcharts in which I use as a basis for creating my own. I love creative process flowcharts for many reasons, in which include the simplicity, a sense of organization, it is visually appealing, informative, and a clear process model. These designs, especially in terms of logo making and UI design, were extremely helpful. Being ADHD, I'm most drawn to visuals, so for me, this was most appealing in terms of laying out my own process model. As an ADHD designer, information needs to be simplistic yet informative and visually appealing. For me, Creative Flowchart ticks all these boxes. In the first year of visual communication, we learnt different aspects of design thinking in ways such as designing as sustainable for users' demands, different steps involved in the creative making process. The ones we defined were ideation, empathy, sympathy, prototyping, etc., in terms of UI design and UX design. This year, in year two, we have studied our design process as an individual and now experienced designer. We have learnt different people's processes, and which have allowed me to further explore my own and have an understanding of my own creative process. 76.5% of designers did have a design process, and 50% of designers said that they cannot design without their own process. Have you ever wondered why we are so drawn to order, organizations, and systems? We are constantly looking for balance and symmetry. We just love looking at things fitting perfectly into place, says Nada Aluch. These graphs depict the significance of a design process to a designer and why a design process is important to them. To conclude my seminar, the study of individualized design processes has shown me the significance to having a process as a designer. I now understand why having a design process is important. It has made me realize how unique I am as an ADHD designer and realized in myself what my own process is. Being a competitive world, especially in the design industry now, it is important to embody qualities of organisation and competence in which you can have by forming a design process in your own work. Thank you, and that's the end of my seminar.